The New York Mets are in the running to sign Kyle Tucker, but is it too soon for fans to get your hopes up?
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're listening to Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. On the show today, we're going to talk more about Kyle Tucker. The New York Mets are one of three teams that has met with Kyle Tucker this offseason. We'll go through that report and what the pitch is for the Mets to sign Tucker compared to the pitch of the other teams who are bidding on his services. Then in the second segment, I want to talk about how good this lineup would be with Tucker. Could the Mets have the best trio of hitters in baseball if they signed him? And then in the final segment, I'm going to talk specifically to you, the fans. Is it time to get your hopes up, or should you still be guarded about this free agent pursuit? Before we get to any of it, though, I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. I've covered the New York Mets on this show since the 2019 season. This is the #1 daily podcast on the New York Mets. If you want to find some of my written work, you can do so over at justbaseball.com, where I work as the editor-in-chief. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL playoffs are here. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. Now, Jim Duquette came out with a report on Sunday that the Mets are one of three teams that has had a meeting with Kyle Tucker. Here is the report. He says a league source confirmed to me that the three main teams involved in the Tucker negotiations, Toronto, the Dodgers, and the Mets, have all met with the player either in person or over Zoom as part of the recruiting process for the star player. Now, what has been reported so far about the Kyle Tucker pursuit is the Blue Jays are the one team that is offering him the long-term deal. The Mets and the Dodgers are both trying to get in on a potential short-term contract with the opt-out to assume a high AAV, where you can get Kyle Tucker for the 2026 season and maybe just that, but you're getting the best free agent that was on the board and allowing him to then reset his market and remove the qualifying offer that is attached. So I will say that the latest in free agency could have Kyle Tucker more open to signing this type of a deal because Scott Boras continues to have success with his opt-out structured contracts for guys who have the qualifying offer attached. Now, Kyle Tucker is not a Scott Boras free agent, but Scott Boras employs this strategy a lot when his guy hits the market with the qualifying offer attached, like Pete Alonso last year, and the market never develops for them. So they sign the 3-year deal with the opt-outs or the 2-year deal, with the second year being a player option where they can reset their market and hopefully have a big year so they can go back into free agency the next season and do a lot better. And it's been working. Matt Chapman signs the short-term deal with the Giants. Before the season ends, he gets a long-term extension. Blake Snell signs the opt-out laden contract, opts out, ends up getting a much better deal with the Dodgers in his second trip to free agency. This offseason, Pete Alonso, 5 years, $155 million. Alex Bregman, 5 years, $175 million. I did talk about that signing on yesterday's show, the Cubs picking up Bregman. One thing I didn't know then that I know now, there was $70 million in deferrals in that contract that will take the present day value a lot closer to what Pete Alonso and Kyle Schwarber got. Still a great deal for Bregman. And you combine that with what he did last year with the Red Sox, he did very well looking for a short-term deal first and then getting a long-term deal later. So maybe this is something that is appetizing to Kyle Tucker, and that's a central theme in the Mets pitch. I imagine if they aren't saying, here's our pitch, here's $400 million, it's going to be centered around, okay, you're going to come to us in 2026 and you're going to have the best season of your career, and here's why. And that pitch has to center around playing with Juan Soto and hitting behind him in the lineup, having Juan Soto on base in front of him 40% of the time, and what those two guys can do together. Because in terms of plate discipline, it doesn't get much better than Juan Soto and Kyle Tucker. If those guys are in the same lineup, These guys don't strike out. They walk a ton. They slug. They're really good hitters. And together, they can be really dangerous. The Mets are probably pointing to Pete Alonso himself and saying, look what Pete did when he was protecting Juan Soto in the lineup. He had the best season of his career outside of that rookie season, and he turned it into a much better deal the second time into free agency. Aaron Judge had a pretty incredible year with Juan Soto batting in front of him. Granted, he had a great year without him also this past season. But I think part of the Mets pitch has to be centered around Francisco Lindor and Juan Soto and becoming one of the best trios in baseball, which we'll talk about more in the next segment. I'm sure it would be about Nolan McLean and Jonah Tong in this budding farm system that the Mets have the potential to win in 2026. And if he sticks around for the full 3-year deal or 4-year deal, a chance to win every single year. And then, of course, it comes down to the financial side. And it comes down to a contract that has an opt-out after the first year. As much as I would love it if the Mets would sign Kyle Tucker to a contract that I talked about last week, a 6-year deal where you meet somewhere in the middle of the super long-term deal and the short-term deal, and instead you find a contract where Kyle Tucker locks in a big number, but still has the ability to hit the market again after year 2 or year 3 and opt out and get a much bigger contract when he's still in his very early 30s. He's going to be, for this upcoming season, 29. So, it's still a chance to hit free agency, maybe not going into his age 30 season, but after his age 30 season or his age 31 season. But again, the reporting has remained consistent that the Mets are looking at a shorter term deal. And so if the 6-year is not on the table and you're just looking at a 3-year deal, you can't ask or hope that the opt-out's going to be after year 2. It's just not going to happen. If he's signing a 3-year deal, it's because he wants to test the market again off of a great season. And he would hate to sign a 3-year deal with an opt-out after year 2, have a great first year, have a bad second year, and then he's not in a position to opt out after that second year. So that's the first hurdle that you have to get your mind around as a fan. And as a front office, the Mets have to get their mind around the fact that they're going to give up draft pick compensation because they're signing a qualifying offer tendered free agent when they're a luxury tax repeat offender team. They will give up draft capital and also international bonus pool money to get Kyle Tucker. So that is a big thing that has to be acknowledged. You are giving up a lot beyond just the salary to get Kyle Tucker. And then you got to put together a more competitive structure that allows you to beat the Dodgers in these negotiations. Because when it came to signing your own guy, Edwin Diaz, and it became clear that a 3-year deal was possible, the Dodgers outmaneuvered the Mets and got a deal done. I don't feel entirely confident that the pitch for a 1-year, 3-year deal, but essentially, hey, here's your chance to have the best possible season. It's hard to beat the Dodgers pitch. Hey, come to our team. You're guaranteed to make the playoffs. Guaranteed. You don't have to be the best player. You don't have to be the second best player. You're probably the third best player. Maybe you are the second best player. Who knows? But you don't have to have that pressure because there's stars all over the place. And you can live in California, have one great season, win a World Series, hit the market again. It's a pretty good pitch. And it's a tough one for the Mets to beat. They're going to have to financially outmaneuver them or really sell them on the Soto effect and just being a Met. But it's going to come down to the financials. It always does. And so I think the pitch has to be incentivize that first year as much as possible. Give him essentially the best 1-year deal he could possibly have with the pillow of a second and third year after that. Remember, this is the best free agent in the market. So here's what I came up with. 3 years, $130 million. Might sound familiar. That was the Max Scherzer contract. $43.33 million per. But like I said, incentivize that first year. Maybe you give him $50 million for year 1. $25 million signing bonus. That's how you can really grease the wheel a little bit. $25 million in salary. And then after that, he'd have $80 million over the next 2 or the second and third year of the deal. with opt-outs after each year. It's a lot. It's $50 million. It's blowing your luxury tax out of the water, because at that point, you've pretty much, it would come down to the 43.33 million is how it'd be calculated. You're now past where your luxury tax payroll was going to opening day last year, and you've yet to address your rotation, your bullpen, or your bench. And you're giving up draft capital and international bonus pool money because he's a qualifying offer tendered free agent. That's a lot to give up. But if it makes you a World Series contender, is it worth it? That's what we're going to talk about next. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is officially in playoff mode every game day during the NFL playoffs. FanDuel is giving customers even more ways to get in on the action, because right now, every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel offers a Get a Profit Boost pack waiting for you inside the app each game day. You'll see a pack loaded with multiple profit boosts so you can apply to the bets that you like most those profit boost packs. You open up your profit boost pack first thing on game day and see what boosts you might want to apply. The boosts let you lean into your game day instincts, whether you're backing momentum, defense, quarterback play, coaching, whatever it is. These boosts are going to give you more juice on your bets. Every play feels bigger, and the boosts make your bets feel that way too. You make your picks, you then apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs are rolling. So visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 16,000 subscribers. If the New York Mets signed Kyle Tucker, their starting lineup might look something like this. Francisco Lindor batting leadoff, playing short. Juan Soto maybe in left field instead of right, batting second. Kyle Tucker playing right, batting third. Jorge Polanco batting cleanup at first base. Mark Vientos DHing, batting fifth. Brett Beatty batting sixth, playing third. Francisco Alvarez behind the dish, batting seventh. Marcus Semien playing second, batting eighth. And Carson Bench as the 9-hole hitter in center field. That's a really good team. You got your top three, which is unbelievable, with Lindor, Soto, and Tucker. You got Polanco and Vientos giving you some power in the middle of that lineup. Beatty and Alvarez are the ultimate X factors for this team, guys that feel like they're on the precipice of really taking off after a really strong second half last year. You got Marcus Semien, who you hope is a bounce back candidate, but he's there for defense. And then you round it out with a rookie with plenty of upside in Carson Bench. It's a really good team defensively. It's a good team offensively. It's a better team than the one the Mets had last year. Without Pete Alonso, without Brennan Nimmo, without Jeff McNeil, if you're telling me that you've replaced those three guys with Tucker, Polanco, and Semien defensively, I think you're better, because the only position you've conceivably gotten worse is at first base, and it's not like Pete Alonso set the highest bar in the world for Jorge Polanco to jump over. I know he hasn't played the position much, but he's been working on it for over a year as a former shortstop. I just don't think that's going to cripple your defense. And at second base, you got a Gold Glover, and Kyle Tucker in the outfield is younger than Brennan Nimmo. He can play right field and push Soto to left. It does make your team better defensively as well. But the offense is why you're signing Kyle Tucker. And I wanted to look at the best version of Kyle Tucker. When you remove the injuries the last 2 years, he broke his shin in 2024, and that limited him to 78 games. But in those 78 games, he hit 23 homers. He got on base at a 408 clip. He had a 993 OPS, and his weighted runs created plus was 179. So 79% better than your league average hitter at 100. That's a remarkable season that got cut short due to injury. Over the first 3 months in 2025, Kyle Tucker hit 291, 395 on base, 537 slug. So the OPS was 931. The WRC plus was 157, and he had 17 homers in 83 games. Then he had the hairline fracture, I believe it was, in his hand, his pinky. I can't remember exactly. It was a hand injury. that he played through and the numbers took a nosedive. And then at the end of the season, I think he had a little bit of a quad injury or something like that. But regardless, if you look at the best version of Kyle Tucker, 78 games in 2024, and you look at his stats through June in 2025, that is a 161 game sample. Across that 161 game sample, Kyle Tucker hit 290, got on base at a 401 clip, and he slugged at a 559 clip, hit 40 home runs and then 161 game sample, drove in 101, stole 31 bases, had a 167 WRC plus, which trailed only 3 hitters: Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and Juan Soto. This is a game-changing bat that would have you in position to have the best offense in baseball if everything clicked. If you got the best version of Kyle Tucker in a contract year at 29 years old, which is a distinct possibility, it's not like these injuries have been degenerative knee issues or something that is going to keep showing up. It's been a couple of sort of freak injuries the last couple of years that have sidetracked this guy. And before that, he was a durable player. If Kyle Tucker is healthy and at his best and comfortable and rolling with Juan Soto hitting in front of him, that's a dangerous combination. You got Juan Soto in his age 27 season and Kyle Tucker in his age 29 season. And you have Francisco Lindor, who's still in his prime. That's your 1 through 3. Is there a better 1 through 3 in Major League Baseball? We'll just look at the National League at first here. For the Braves, Acuna, Olsen, Riley. Good trio. At their best, sure, they can have a really solid season. But look, Acuna and Soto, we'll say those guys maybe cancel each other out. Matt Olson, Austin Riley do not compare to Francisco Lindor and Kyle Tucker. Phillies, Harper, Schwarber, Trey Turner, not on the same level as Soto, Tucker, and Lindor. The Cubs, they just brought in Alex Bregman. Who's their second best player? Is Bregman their best player? I don't even know. Pico Armstrong looked like their best player. Michael Busch maybe had the most complete season. Dansby Swanson's a great defender. They have a good team overall, but they don't have the type of superstars the Mets would have, or even that the Mets have, even without Kyle Tucker. The Brewers, Yelich, Contreras, Churio, good players, not the same as the Mets trio. The Diamondbacks have a pretty good one. Ketel Marte, who now is staying put, Corbin Carroll, and Geraldo Perdomo. That's a pretty good group. If Perdomo does what he did last year and Ketel Marte continues to post unbelievable offensive seasons, that might be up there. But I still don't think it's Tucker, Soto, Lindor. It's the Padres, another one that I would say is pretty close. Machado, Jackson Merrill, Fernando Tatis. It's a good trio. But where Machado's at in his career, I think Lindor's got a little bit more of his prime left in front of him than Machado does. And then you're talking Merrill, Tatis for Soto, Tucker, and I'm taking Soto, Tucker. I mean, defensively, you're taking Merrill, Tatis, but full picture, full package, I still like the Mets trio. And then you get to the cream of the crop, the Dodgers. Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman. If we're going to factor in Ohtani's pitching, obviously that changes the narrative a little bit. But if you're just talking about 3 offensive pieces, who would you take? Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, or Tucker, Soto, Lindor? Mookie Betts had a 732 OPS last year. I think it's going to be better. But I think I'd take Francisco Lindor over Mookie Betts next year. I don't want to disrespect a first bout Hall of Famer too much. Mookie Betts can certainly bounce back, but he is getting a little bit up there in the 30s. So is Lindor, but feels like Lindor, again, has a little bit more of his prime in front of him. So I think, if anything, call that a coin flip with Lindor getting a slight edge. Ohtani clears Soto, but if we're just talking about the bats, would it be stunning if Juan Soto at 27 years old had a better season than Ohtani at 31? I don't think that's crazy. And then you get to Freddie Freeman and Kyle Tucker. Freeman's going to be 36, still a stud, still scares me more than any hitter in baseball, I think. Just one guy steps into the box that I am just the most terrified of. You think it'd be Ohtani. You think it might be, Judge, but maybe I just don't see Judge enough. Maybe it's the old scars from Freddie Freeman's Braves days, but that guy is just terrifying. Regardless, Kyle Tucker's going to be 29. Again, I just think you would have a chance here at one of the best trios of hitters in Major League Baseball. And you take so much pressure off of Polanco, Vientos, Beatty, Alvarez, Simeon, Bench. Those guys don't have to worry about protecting Juan Soto. That's Kyle Tucker's job. And I think it really just would have such a big trickle-down effect on the rest of this lineup in a way that signing Cody Bellinger is just not going to do. I've been on the boat of trying to trade for Jarren Duran. Doesn't seem like the Red Sox want to do that. So with your options dwindling, this is the guy. And yes, if you sign Kyle Tucker, your bench is still just Luis Torrens, Tyrone Taylor, and Luis Angel Acuna. It's not a one move and you're done. You still have to do other things. You'd still have to find a bench bat. You'd still have to maybe add an arm to the bullpen. There's still, of course, the pursuit for a frontline starting pitcher that the Mets could still make, especially if it was Freddie Peralta, where they can put the chips in the free agent market on Tucker, and they can put the prospect capital in on Peralta, get those two deals done. And all of a sudden, an offseason where Mets fans were completely down on this front office and just the franchise in general, there's something to really be hopeful for. And you're probably going, man, this team's better than it was last year. But there is still some major hurdles that have to be clear for the Mets to have that team, to be the one that wins the bidding on Tucker and to actually trade for Freddie Peralta. These are massive moves that are in no way guaranteed to take place. But as a fan, should you be holding out your hopes now that Kyle Tucker will be a New York Met, or should you stay guarded because there's no way that this team's going to pull off that move? That's where we're going to close the show here in just a minute. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now it's time to take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everyday Club and get Locked On Mets without interruptions. Get access to the Locked On Everyday Club Discord server and more. Go to lockedonmets.supercast.com to learn more. All right, so the question now becomes, should you get your hopes up as a Mets fan that this deal gets done? I think there's a chance. I do. But in this offseason, the Mets have already endured a lot of heartache. I'm not telling you, hey, it's going to happen. I'm not going to sit here and say one of Tucker or Bellinger will be a Met. I can't go that far because the messaging of what the Mets are trying to accomplish has gotten a little bit muddied, where if it's all about run prevention, they'd be in on Bellinger. Kyle Tucker has been a good defensive outfielder, but he wasn't necessarily the best of defensive outfielders last year. Maybe that was playing in a tough ballpark to read fly balls at Wrigley. Maybe that was the fact that he was dealing with injuries. Maybe it was the pressure of a contract year. Who knows? But he's not as elite of a corner outfielder as Bellinger. So you would think, okay, run prevention. They're going to get Cody Bellinger. But I don't think it's that simple. I think it's more a matter of what are you comfortable to invest in? Where are you comfortable to go long-term? And in the David Stearns era of Mets baseball, it's been Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Kyle Tucker. Excuse me, not Kyle Tucker. It's been Yoshinobu Yamamoto and Juan Soto. Those have been the two guys the Mets have pursued on long-term deals. Guys that were hitting free agency at 25 years old for Yamamoto and 26 for Soto. Now, Tucker is 28 right now. He'll be 29 for this upcoming season. He still does have youth on his side, but it does not seem like this is going to be a long-term commitment, which makes it a lot harder to say, oh, the Mets are going to get this done. Last year with Juan Soto, it didn't matter what the terms were. It didn't matter how far the bidding got. The Mets were going to go to whatever length they had to get a deal done. They're not pursuing Kyle Tucker with that level of aggression. It's this wait and see type of approach, which up to this point has not gotten the Mets anywhere. I mean, I guess in some respects, they did not wait and see on Devin Williams. That was one where they kind of, and I guess the wait and see approach maybe is not a fair depiction of the Mets offseason, because for the guys they wanted, they got the deal done. When it came to Devin Williams, they were able to beat a very aggressive market and get that contract done. When it came to Jorge Polanco, there's a lot of teams that are in. The Mets went to 2 years, 40, and they got a deal done. But with Pete Alonso, it was more wait back and see. With Edwin Diaz, wait and see what he gets. And with Bellinger and Tucker and Framber and Ranger Suarez, all the guys that are still in the market, it has been a wait and see approach. Wait to see the market materialize or not materialize and try to swoop in. And yeah, I guess they effectively swooped in on Polanco, but it's not like they got Polanco at an AAV. We're like, man, what a steal. It was, they spent that much on Polanco. Okay. I guess they like him and they like that it was a 2-year deal, but I don't think anybody had Polanco making $20 million for the upcoming season. That was a place they were aggressive. Maybe we'll see that level of aggression here on Tucker to a much larger scale of, okay, like I mentioned, 3-year deal, 130 guaranteed. And in that first year, you're getting 50 million and you get half of that right now. That right there would maybe open the eyes of Kyle Tucker and his agent to the possibility of being a New York Met if you were aggressive to that level. It's just a matter of, are the Mets going to do what it takes to get this done? And this offseason, we can't have confidence that's going to happen because of where the narrative is surrounding this team. I still think that the Mets are going to go into next season with a great chance to win the division and to be a World Series contender. But right now, a lot of those hopes are pinned to the fact that you have Soto and Lindor and you have this great farm system. Can they make another move where we look at this offseason and we go, yeah, okay, they lost Alonso, they traded McNeil and Nimmo, they lost Diaz, but Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, not a bad replacement for Edwin Diaz. You look at the lineup and you say, all right, well, Semien versus McNeil, maybe that could be an upgrade when you factor in all the defense and maybe a bounce back from Semien. If you look in the outfield, you see Kyle Tucker over Brandon Nimmo. All of a sudden, if you were to say Tucker Polanco versus Nimmo Alonso, with Nimmo and Alonso both having long-term deals and Tucker being a 3-year deal, Polanco being a 2-year deal, you can get to a point where you say, you know what, the Mets actually nailed this offseason. This is the signing that would flip the narrative entirely. Either this signing or a Freddie Peralta trade with an extension after it. Those are the things that I think would really move the needle for Mets fans. If they sign Bellinger, if they sign Framber, I think those are other good plans that Mets fans would get behind because it would be a big splashy move. But I don't think they're the home runs that a Freddie Peralta trade or a Kyle Tucker signing would be. If the Mets could hit both of those home runs over the coming weeks, then I think it's going to be, as much as I was the biggest Pete Alonso fan out there, certainly when it comes to campaigning for the Mets to sign the guy, it would almost be, all right, well, bye, Pete. Look at this team the Mets have constructed. That is how good this offseason could get. But it's hard to put yourself out there to get hurt again. So we'll see. We'll see what more can materialize here, but I do think that some movement is going to happen this week. I think the Bregman domino was a big one to fall. I think we're going to see some ramped up pursuits of these few signature bats that are left on the market with Bichette, Bellinger, Tucker. These guys are the last big 3 pieces to fall here. And then, of course, you have all the minor free agents that are out there, the guys that are in that next tier below, or even, the third tier once you get to, platoon bats, things like that. There's a lot of things the Mets have to do. I think they're waiting to make their next big move to then see what the ancillary pieces will be. And one of those big moves could be Kyle Tucker. So we'll see. We'll see what's going to come over the next few days here on the Tucker free agency and everything else that's going on in the market. I'll have you updated on any other news or rumors that we get. I also want to start to talk about players that can have a breakout season. So That's going to be something that we're going to start to do, focus on individual players and the case for them to have a breakout year in 2026. Thinking the Brett Beatty's of the world, Francisco Alvarez. So we'll be talking about that as well throughout this week here. I do appreciate all of you for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Subscribe if you are watching on YouTube. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. And thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. Now for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. See what Sully's got cooking on all the latest in Major League Baseball over on Locked On MLB, wherever you get your podcasts, on YouTube or whatever audio platform you choose.